So today on Sports Fall, we're taking a very unique look at the early start of a career of an NHL pro that, for a lot of people, was going to be a can't miss prospect right out of the U.S. system he grew up in. Of course, I'm talking about Bobby Hull's son, Dennis Hull's nephew, Brett Andrew Hull, better known as Brett Hull. Now, he was born August 9th, 1964, and he currently serves as executive vice president of St. Louis Blues of the NHL. But we're going to look at his arriving in Calgary and his very bizarre departure just a couple of years later. Now, Hull basically turned out to be a top 10 NHL scorer in his career. He was the only one of five players ever to score 50 goals in 50 games. He won two Stanley Cups, 99 with Dallas and 2002 in Detroit. And he's also on the NHLPA list as 100 greatest NHL players in history. Now, Brett was considered a can't miss prospect. He was getting heavy scouting when he was 13, 14, 15 years old. Obviously, being the son of Bobby Hull was going to get a lot of attention. Now, he ended up as one of the NHL's greatest snipers, and he was an elite, scorer at every level, especially in his early career when he played college hockey with the great University of Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs, where he scored 52 goals in 85-86. Now, he ended up in the AHL the next year, and he was a good New Brunswick-based prospect. Played with the Moncton Golden Flames of the AHL, won the last provincial franchises in the AHL, scoring another 50 goals. Now, he eventually went to break many records in his career, and but we're going to talk just about the early part of his career and leading up to what I consider one of the worst trades in NHL history. Now, he was born in Belleville, which is a great hockey town. His mother, Joanne, who was also a great athlete in her own right, was an American professional figure skater who taught him how to skate. It wasn't Bobby. Now, he had three brothers, Bobby Jr., Blake, and Bart, and a younger half-sister, Michelle. Bart actually went on to play professional football in the CFL. And, of course, his famous and very humorous uncle, Dennis, who played with 72 Team Canada in Chicago for a number of years. Because, he played for the Blackhawks at the time, the younger Hull spent his early life in Illinois. And he played organized hockey at the first time at the age of 4 in the Chicago area. The family moved back to Canada when Bobby signed back with the WHA in 1972. And as a youth, he and teammate Richard Crom played in the ever popular and recognized 1977 Quebec International Pee Wee Hockey Tournament with the Winnipeg South Marnox minor hockey team. Brent eventually moved to Vancouver with his mother and two of his younger siblings shortly before his parents' tough divorce in 1979. And Hull was estranged from his father for quite some time. They spoke periodically, but it wasn't really a strong relationship. Now, he didn't really get scouted by a major junior team, and when he was first eligible actually for the NHL entry draft in '82, he was still playing in a juvenile league, and he was passed over because a lot of people felt he was overweight, that maybe the pressure being Bobby's son would be too much on him. Now, he eventually joined the Penticton Knights of the Tier 2 British Columbia Junior Hockey League, which I've covered before. Some great talents come true. He went in there the 82-83 season, where he scored 48 goals in 50 games. But for some reason, again, he was passed over for an 83 entry draft as teams remained unconvinced of his commitment to the game and his conditioning. The NHL teams finally took notice of Hull in the 84 season when he scored 105 goals in 56 games from Penticton and broke the BCHL scoring record with 188 points. The Flames and a lot of teams didn't want to draft him because, again, the negative attitude, and he eventually selected him in the sixth round of the 1984 entry draft, 117 overall. So you can imagine the 1984 draft, all the teams that were ahead of him, including the Montreal Canadiens and Toronto Maple Leafs, didn't want to take a chance on Hull. But hindsight is 2020, of course. I really think they underrated him. I really think maybe his nonchalant attitude really hurt him. And well, we'll get more into this, and this lack of respect shows up later on, but we'll touch on it very soon. Now, after drafted by Calgary, he accepted a scholarship for, again, University of Minnesota Duluth, and he scored 32 goals as a freshman in '85. Now, he had a terrorizing shot just like his father, and he won Rookie of the Year that year, and he won similar honors from the for the WCHA overall. Now, again, his coaches were on him, said he had to improve his skating. He had a shot, but he didn't have the conditioning that was seemed to be. But it seemed to be a trend, or were kind of mentally picking on him. You wouldn't see that in 2019-20. There would be a conditioning coach or to be put on a diet. And again, he over-excelled the next season, 85-86. He broke the school record of 49 goals in a year. He was named to the WCHA First Team All-Star at right wing as a finalist for the Hobey Baker Award as a top college player in the States. Now, at University of Duluth, he still holds a number of records: most goals by a rookie, most goals in one season, 20 power play goals, 7 hat tricks, and 13 multiple goal games in 85-86. And he also holds the school's playoff record of 4 goals in a postseason. His number 29 was retired actually in 2006. Now, Calgary eventually took a chance on him. Well, this was kind of ironic. When he was still a university remained in Duluth, he got his NHL debut, get this, in the 1986 Stanley Cup playoffs against Montreal. And I saw that game. He played Game 3 of the series when the set was still tied 1-1. And ironically, he almost scored. He hit the post on a very tough shot. And the whole series kind of went on moments like that. If Hull would have scored, I think he would have opened out the rest of the series and Montreal would have been done. So technically, Brett Hull scoring, where he wore number 29, Ken Dryden's number in college, really turned a favor over to Montreal. And he hit that post on his first shift, and I still remember that shift. He showed, just like his father, the flashes of what he called tension brilliance. He did appear in another game in a 5-game series, but he had his moment in the sun taken away from him. Now, after that short period in the playoffs, he was sent to the AHL, of course, with Moncton, scoring those 50 goals. He was named Rookie of the Year and also was on the league's All-Star team. He got a brief recall to Calgary during the year, but it was only on November 13th that he scored his first NHL goal, and it was actually a game winner on a breakaway in a 4-3 victory past the ever-porous Steve Weeks of Hartford. Now, he appeared in 5 NHL games that year, and of course, he was called back up for the playoffs, and he notched 2 more goals and added an assist. Now, here's where the bizarre moment came about. They were shopping Brett Hull around to other teams in the league, which he didn't tell the media, and Brett wasn't told. He was traded, of all things, after scoring 26 goals in 52 games with a point-a-game pace. He was traded on March 7, 1988, with Steve Bozak to the Blues in exchange for rugged defenseman Rob Ramage and goalie Rick Wamsley. Now, here's the bizarreness of the trade. Could Calgary have won the Stanley Cup without Wamsley as a backup and Rob Ramage as a key defenseman? Probably not. They did win the Cup in '89, but how many Cups do you think Calgary fans had lost, or the Calgary team had lost by trading Brett Hull? Like, Brett Hull in his prime back in the day would equate to an Eric Lindros, who would cost you 5 major players, 3 draft picks. They traded Hull and with Steve Bozak, who was a very competent 20-goal-a-year man, for basically a rejected backup in Rick Wamsley, who didn't have a killer instinct, and Rob Ramage, who was very getting long in his teeth after several seasons in NHL. So what did this do? Well, it weakened Calgary for a number of years. It strengthened St. Louis and put St. Louis to a level where you see in the 2019-20 season, the ghost of Brett Hull was kind of around St. Louis in the whole playoffs, which probably led them to winning the Stanley Cup. Every NHL fan of the mid-1980s, when they heard Brett Hull was traded by Calgary, a Canadian team, where Bobby Hull was a superstar, Dennis Hull was a superstar in the NHL for years, to the St. Louis Blues, they said, what type of cocaine were these people on. But see, Hull was same thing that happened with Theo Fleury at the start and a few others. The question is dedication. The question is fluctuating weight. The only similar situation I can see is that Matt Stairs were treated the same way. Matt Stairs is not your typical conditioned athlete, and Brett Hull and Matt Stairs had great careers long after their early coaches said, well, he's not in shape, he's not committed to the skills, whatever. And look at Matt Stairs and Brett Hull. They've excelled so much in their careers, overachieved in a lot of way. But I mean, I think really they expected Brett to be Bobby. And Brett, in a lot of ways, was as good as Bobby. The only problem is with Brett was what you call a complete captain or a complete leader like Bobby was. Bobby took on a whole city in Chicago on his shoulders, took a whole league on his shoulders in WHA. And, he had some emotional problems. He was abusive to his some members of his family. But Brett was a player that if this was him coming up in 2000, 2010, no way in the world. It would be like trading Sidney Crosby because he's 5 pounds overweight, or trading Ovechkin at the start because Ovechkin couldn't understand English quick enough. Bizarre trade. And, Fletcher, I got a lot of respect for him, and a lot of respect for the Calgary franchise. But did Terry Crisp not like him? Did Risebrough, who had some pull with the Flames before he went to management, didn't like him? Did the press run him out of town? Probably so. But imagine trading Brett Hull and Bozic besides, for like Ramage and Walmsley. I mean, would you trade your hockey cards? See, a lot of people got to look at this like value hockey cards. When I saw Brett Hull playing Game 3 against Montreal in Woodstock at JR's restaurant, I said, we're fucked. Excuse the language, but we're fucked. If he scores, if he's anything like his father, sure enough, the first shift, he hit the post. Brang. And I'm saying, Montreal at the time was only scoring 2 or 3 goals per playoff game. And we won the cup that year by a constant miracle, more than a miracle in 1993. But again, I don't want to get much into later career of Brett Hull because his results speak for himself. He was an accomplished player, great leader, great shot. But again, in 1985-86 hockey, seeing Brett Hull as disposable, you're mental. And if I ever talk to any of the Calgary management that is still living, I never asked this, but what do you think Peter Maher from Campbellton, the longtime announcer of the Flames, thought about the Brett Hull trade? He can probably say, well, I think they made a mistake there. Because Peter is never a negative person. But he said probably, I think they made a mistake. Of course he made a mistake. Who in the hell would trade Brett Hull? Would you trade Brett Hull for Rob Ramage for hockey cards in 1986? I mean, come on. But for the people in New Brunswick, we love Brett Hull for 2 reasons. Because Bobby has a lot of friends in New Brunswick. And Bobby's changed over the years, I have to give him this. Dennis is very popular. He's been a speaker at many New Brunswick events. When Brett was in Moncton, he was a great fan with the kids and the parents and everybody else. He left a good legacy. But all I'm saying, Brett Hull made the St. Louis Blues back into a contender. He solidified the last championship era of the Red Wings. He basically gave so much to hockey, and he's an American hockey role model. He played majority of his hockey for U.S. teams, and he's always been a motivator for the young U.S. players coming up. I know Austin Matthews and the other U.S. stars like Eichel look to Brett Hull as a motivation, and he should. So again, on this sports file, we tell you to keep your stick on the ice. If you ever see Brett Hull, just tell him there's a new column about him, and he'll probably listen and laugh, saying, they always criticize me about my weight. I don't care. Brett Hull is 300 pounds. The man can shoot. The man knows what a net is. There's an old expression, Dalhousie Rangers, Dalhousie Marauders, whatever you want to call them. There's an old expression in Dalhousie senior hockey. You want players that know where the net is. If you shoot, it might go in. Clem Trombley can tell you that. Peter Thorne, Brian Landry, all the great Rangers through the years. If you shoot, it might go in. And if Brett had a chance, that puck was in. Can you imagine the accuracy he had to score all these goals, 70-some or whatever? Tremendous. Anyway, big storm coming on later week, so be careful. And if you're snowed in, please listen to our podcast. Give me a like or subscribe. And if you like my podcast channel, tell your friends. If you don't like it, I don't give a shit. Don't tell nobody. Have a good day.